hope that that they do something similar to that in the MCU. I think that would be really cool. I'd love to see Stan Sebastian, maybe not in exactly that same Bucky Cap outfit, because that was kind of weird.
Yeah,
if he put on the super soldier, version of that costume, I think that would be kind of cool.
I think that it's there's a good chance that they might go that direction, especially you had said that Sebastian Stan had signed that 9-picture deal with Marvel, right?
Stan, isn't it?
But at the same time, think about in the scenario in the comics, they kill Steve Rogers in the comics somewhere around 2007 or so. Within about a year of that happening, over in DC Comics, you had the Final Crisis event that happened where Batman theoretically dies and Dick Grayson has to take over the mantle of the Bat for a year. So you kind of had the same thing going on with both of the big two comic book companies doing something similar at the same time.
Yeah. See, I think that and obviously, there's the whole revolving door of death in comic books, and no character's death ever means anything, except for Uncle Ben. Maybe because even for the longest time, like, there were 3 people who don't come back to life, right? There was Uncle Ben and Jason Todd and Bucky.
Right.
And now, like, and even recently there was the Spider-Man sort of event where the Jackal was making more clones again, because we didn't learn our lesson apparently about the whole clone thing the first time around. But they thought that would be a good idea to bring back. And there was a clone of Uncle Ben, and there was that kind of fake out that maybe Uncle Ben is going to come back too.
Well, and you also had the idea that death doesn't mean anything in comic books. You also had the situation with Peter Parker in the Ultimate Spider-Man series, I think we're in issue 150, at the end of the original run, they kill Peter Parker off in a issue that has no words, just panels, and then after that they bring in, Miles Morales.
And I think that's really that was a great move in the Ultimate line. And I think it's great that Miles Morales is part of the mainstream Marvel universe now in the comics. And I think it would. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up showing up at some point in the MCU as well.
Honestly, I would be willing to bet on it, and I'll tell you exactly why.
Oh, because it's good diversity.
Well, there's that, but I think there's an actual in-universe kind of meta-narrative reason, and the reason is that when you look at the character of Miles Morales, that his character was essentially based on and inspired by 2 people. One of those is President Barack Obama, and the other one is Donald Glover's character Troy in the television show Community.
Uh-huh.
Because there's an episode of Community where Troy and his best friend Abed, they're the two geeks on the show. They're kind of like Sheldon and Leonard from Big Bang Theory, but the Community version.
Okay.
I think in a lot of ways they're better. But so Troy, there's an episode where he comes out wearing a Spider-Man onesie.
Uh-huh.
And kind of like he's Spider-Man. And there's the guys at Marvel at the time that were working on it, Brian Michael Bendis and some others, they were like, oh, that's an idea. I'd totally do that. I'd totally read that.
Yeah.
Essentially Troy from Community as Spider-Man. And so they use those 2 influences to create the character. And then when you watch, Spider-Man Homecoming, minor spoilers, the character that Donald Glover plays in the film happens to be Miles Morales' uncle, and
right.
I think that was intentional.
Yep. That scene is so great with him. Like, I just love that line of, like, you know that you got to get better at this part of the job, right?
Right. So
that was really good. We'll talk about Spider-Man: Homecoming is going to be another whole episode of this afterwards.
Okay.
But anyway, let's kind of try and get ourselves back on track.
Try and get ourselves back on track.
Now that we've talked about every single other thing. So there's a couple things about this movie that just I loved so much when I was rewatching it this time. Man, that scene with Peggy in the hospital just kills me, because the end of First Avenger, I think, is one of the best earned, dramatic moments in the Marvel universe in terms of, like, relationship drama. Like, I love that scene so much. And I'm gonna talk to I'm gonna have another episode here later on where I'm gonna talk to somebody about Wonder Woman, and I have sort of shared some of my thoughts on that with another co-host in another episode. But, like, I think that scene stands in stark contrast to the drama between Steve Trevor and Diana in Wonder Woman, where I didn't believe that at all.
Interesting.
So there's that. That was just an amazing bit of acting. I just love that to pieces. One of the other things that really grabbed me in this movie this time was the Winter Soldier's theme, like his musical cues, like that scream, kind of like the screaming violins for his musical cue was really effective and just very unsettling. Kind
of like the Joker's musical cues in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, really similar to that. And as I didn't think about it before, but as I was saying it, just now here, I was thinking about that also. And another thing about the soundtrack, I thought it was interesting how the difference in tone with this movie compared to Captain America was really just very, very well captured in the soundtrack, where it's far less, you get the sort of the Captain America march theme at the very beginning when he's running past Sam like 8 times. Right. So you get it there, but that's the only time I think in the movie that you actually hear that sort of uplifting, the Captain America theme. And the rest of it is it's way less, like, sort of patriotic and brassy, and much more like tense and edgy, and it really helps you understand this is a far, far different kind of story and a different kind of film than the first Avenger was.
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting about this film that kind of bleeds over from the first one, you talked about how the ending to Captain America: The First Avenger, in your mind, is one of the most earned endings relationally, and that ending bleeds its way through, all the way through the finale of the first season of Peggy Carter.
Oh yeah,
where she's on the bridge, right, and she's got that last vial of Steve's blood, the last, the last unit that they have that might be able to recreate the super soldier serum, and to make sure that nobody else gets it. What does she do? She says goodbye and she drops it into the river.
Right.
And then you've got, like you said, you've got the scene where it's the two of them together in the hospital room, and they're having this conversation, and you think things are great and things are lucid, and then all of a sudden the conversation stops, it goes silent, and then she goes back into the Alzheimer's-ish loop again, and you kind of realize where everybody's at, where everybody's come from, and how that bleeds over even into Civil War, and how there's that scene at the beginning where Black Widow asks him, "So, what'd you do this weekend?" And his response is, "Well, since all the guys in my barbershop quartet are dead,
not
much.
Right.
And there's always that sense with Steve Rogers, with Captain America, that Zola even says it straight out in Winter Soldier that Captain America is a man out of time. Everything he knew is gone. I mean, when you watch the film and you listen to the commentary between the Russo brothers as directors and the two screenwriters, they talk about how the world that he gets brought back into is a world where he has missed all of the major events, including 9/11, that have created the world that he's been brought back into, and he's just trying to find his place. I mean, he tells Peggy, one of the main reason that I am still at S.H.I.E.L.D. and still working for S.H.I.E.L.D. is you helped found it.
Yeah.
And
so real quick, a little fun bit about his sort of man out of time thing and how he's trying to catch up. That notebook that he has, and you may know this, they probably mentioned it in the commentary, but that had different entries for different regions, versions of the film. So in Russia, I
did know that.
In Russia, they had one of the things on that list was Yuri Gagarin. And in Latin America, one of the items on the list was Shakira. And in Australia, one of the items on the list was Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter.
Sure.
And so it was an interesting thing that they kind of did to give sort of just give a little nod to the global audience of this film, because I know the first movie did surprisingly well internationally, far more than they thought it was going to, because obviously the character's name is Captain America, like he's such an American centric character, but apparently the appeal is not limited to the United States.
Well, I think part of the appeal of the Captain America character, the Steve Rogers character, is Steve Rogers is...
Well, he's a man with conviction.
Well, he's a man with conviction, and that's part of why he is a paragon, in a sense that he's the best a man can be. Because when you go back and you look at Captain America, the first Avenger, and there's that conversation that happens between Steve and Professor Erskine the night before the procedure.
Right.
And he talks about how the serum works.
Yeah.
And how it takes everything inside someone and externalizes it. And that creates the stark contrast between Steve Rogers and the Red Skull.
Right.
And how even into Winter Soldier, Cap is still that person that is the best a man can be. Mm-hmm. Whereas you've got other characters in the MCU, like, for example, Tony Stark, that is more of the best a man can build.
Yeah. Well, and I think I want to just bring this into like some of the thematic bits of this movie, because this like dovetails really nicely along with what we were saying earlier about House of Cards. Given that he is a man of conviction, and as you said, he is sort of the best that a man can be. Like, mm-hmm. and his status as a man out of time is even further exacerbated by the kind of political realm that he finds himself in, where being a person of really sterling character and somebody of unyielding conviction is just it's so, what do I want to say, not anachronistic, but it's not a good fit, right? Like, because there are all of these secrets and shades of gray, and that's just not a realm where a guy like Captain America can comfortably fit. and that's
Right.
brought out really clearly in the opening